Welcome back. So we have our orange fondant all rolled out and ready to go. We've got our cake that's set up in the refrigerator. Now before we put the fondant on our cake, I'm just going to take my paper towel and kind of smooth out those little harsh edges that were left behind by my spatula. And if you want to use the Viva paper towel method, I know some of you may have heard of that. Viva paper towel pretty much has no pattern to it, and so you can make a buttercream iced cake look like fondant, be really smooth this way, because you can see it doesn't really stick to my cake or my icing now that it's set up in the fridge. So you can use that method if you want to. I personally don't really use it probably as much as some people do, but you are free to use that method. So we're just going to smooth out some of those harsher edges that I don't want showing on underneath my fondant. And now that we've got that done, okay, we're going to put these aside and we're going to unwrap our fondant and put it onto our cake here. There we go. Now some of this obviously is a little bit bigger than what we need already, so I'm going to trim it off even from the get-go here so that it's not that heavy of a piece that's coming onto my cake to weigh it down. Okay, so we will lift this up off of our mat and place it onto our cake. Move this guy over here and cut off our excess pieces, our hang down parts, so that we don't have too heavy of cake or of fondant on our cake, because that's going to smush all of our icing out of proportion. And luckily we didn't have too much hanging down excess. That was nice. Okay, move this stuff aside, and now we can start smoothing it out. So again, we're going to use our round method of our cake, going all the way around one even level to make sure that we don't get too many puckers in here. And one thing that's happening here, I don't know if you can see it, but my fondant is drying out a little bit, and so I've got kind of that elephant kind of skin look to it. But that's actually really good for this because pumpkins have that kind of skin. So you don't have to worry too much about it being perfectly moist and soft and not having that elephant skin for this, because it actually adds some character to it, I think. Okay, so we'll trim off some more excess here. There we go. And we'll continue smoothing on down to the bottom here, lifting out and smoothing down. And we are almost to the bottom, which is great. And the icing is warming up underneath, so it's helping our fondant to stick really nicely. And again, down here at the bottom, I just want to push the fondant against the side of the cake. I don't want to be pulling down on it, because for one thing, that's going to tear my fondant, but for another, it's just going to squish out the icing that's underneath there. And I don't want to squish all of the icing out. That'll just make a big mess for me to have to clean up. Okay, we are on our last little ruffly edge here. Okay, and again, you know, this little spot right here, I've got kind of a little crease to it, and that's okay. It gives some more character to our pumpkin here. Let's go all the way around here. Just check and make sure we don't have any air bubbles or crazy spots. Okay, so we'll take our cutters and make our preliminary cut, just to trim off some of this excess here. And then we'll smooth it out one more time at the base and do our final cut. Now this preliminary cut is really important here too, just to look and make sure that we don't have any icing that's gushing out from the bottom here. And it doesn't look like we do, thank goodness. So we will smooth out a little bit more. And then we'll get our cutters and do our final cut. Now the base of this is not going to look very smooth and pretty, which is fine because the base of our pumpkins never look very smooth and pretty anyway. So we're just going to make our cut and then push the fondant in, and that will be that. Okay. So I've got one little edge here where it looks like I cut in too much and some of the frosting is showing over here, which is fine. I'm gonna show you some fun little border techniques for something like this. A project like this doesn't necessarily need a border on the bottom, but there are some fun things you can do to kind of cover up that border so that it looks really good. Okay, so we'll clean some of this up. And there we go. We've got our little carved pumpkin cake covered with our orange fondant. And I'm just going to knead some of this back together and wrap it back up so that we can use it later and it doesn't get all dried out. Okay. There we go. And we'll package this away. Now, the next part that we're going to do is decide how we're going to get this all decorated. Because you can just leave it like this and, you know, put your little cat guy on top here and it would look great. Or you can take, you know, some orange icing and make your stripes to kind of help it look more lumpy and bumpy like a little pumpkin does. I'm actually just going to take my fingers here and make my icing is nice and soft inside. So I'm just going to make some indentations to make it look more realistic like a little pumpkin. And this is working out beautifully. But you want to make sure not to be too symmetrical with it. I had my fingers too close together for several of them, and yeah, now I'll just do them at different spaces across from each other. Make sure it looks a little more natural. Okay, and we are to the other side. Okay, this worked out perfectly. So we have our nice little lumpy, bumpy, round pumpkin here. The other thing we can do too to decorate him is you can take some color mist. I'm going to take some orange color mist and kind of mist it just a little bit to give him a little bit more shine, kind of make the colors look a little bit different like a pumpkin really looks. It's not all one beautiful color or anything. We're going to put our cat on top of our little pumpkin here, and then we'll finish off with a nice little jack-o'-lantern face. So we'll see you in a minute.